Hi friends, I am so excited to read to you chapter 1 of book 3, The Dragons of Blueland. And as you've heard me say so many times before, this is by far my favorite of the 3 books, and I think you'll see why. Okay, I noticed something at the beginning of this book in this series of 3 is there's a little dedication. I don't know who these people were, but obviously they were special to the author for Charlie and Peggy, whoever they were. The Dragons of Blueland. I want you to take a good look at that illustration because that tells us a lot just in one picture. Isn't that a great illustration? All right, chapter 1 is called The Hiding Place. And here's the illustration that goes along with the beginning of this book. Here we go, The Hiding Place. Over the harbor, past the lighthouse, away from Nevergreen City, flew the happy baby dragon. I'm on my way home to the great high mountains of Blueland, he shouted to the evening skies. At last, I'm off to find my six sisters and 7 brothers and my dear gigantic mother and father. He sped northward over the coast of Popsicornia. He flew all night through the dark scudding clouds toward Awful Desert. And you know what? I have to show you something, everybody. The words Awful Desert have capital letters at the beginning, so that tells me like it's a proper noun, meaning it's an actual place, Awful Desert. And I will show you what I mean by that. See? Awful Desert. Okay. So he was flying toward Awful Desert, which surrounded the mountains of Blueland. I must be careful, he thought to himself, that nobody sees me on my way, but I'll have to stop and rest somewhere. Where can I hide? I've grown as big as a buffalo. Ooh, that's big. And my blue and yellow stripes and gold-colored wings will certainly attract attention. The darkness faded into morning, and looking down, he saw green meadows, fields of corn and potatoes, a road wandering past barns and houses, and a brook zigzagging back and forth across the road. Perhaps I can find a bridge to hide under, thought the dragon, but I'll have to hurry. Soon the farmers will be up. He swooped and coasted down to a place where the road crossed a brook. Makes sense? So a brook is like a little tiny stream or a river, right? Okay, I'm going to read that again. He swooped and coasted down to a place where the road crossed the brook. Gently he landed and pattered down the bank to hide underneath the bridge. But there wasn't any bridge. The road had been built right over the brook, and the water flowed under the road through a culvert, a long, round tunnel. I'm guessing most of you know what a culvert is. We have them right around here, don't we? It's like a little tunnel, but it really is just, the purpose of it is just to allow the water to flow through. And it is often a round, long, smallish, sometimes big, tunnel. And the culvert was too small for the dragon to hide in. I'll try another crossing, he said to himself, scrambling up the bank and galloping down the road as fast as he could to the next crossing. But here, too, a very small culvert carried the water under the road. And here he is. He's actually sticking his head in there to look. Too small. And there he is, galloping down the road to find a hiding place. Oh dear, he muttered as he galloped on farther between a yellow farmhouse and a big yellow barn. Just as he was passing, he heard a rooster scream and a window slam shut in the house. Where shall I hide? Where shall I hide? He panted. And then he came to a third crossing. He tumbled down the bank and found another culvert, but a big culvert, big enough for a baby dragon to hide in. He crawled inside, wading through the shallow water that cooled his hot, sandy feet. What if someone in the farmhouse saw me, he kept thinking, as he stretched just far enough to nibble the tasty skunk cabbages and marsh marigolds growing outside the culvert. And then, as he ate and cooled off, he felt tired and happy and almost safe, and he dozed off to sleep in the culvert. I'm going to show you the pictures here. There he is, running between the house and the barn. And there he is, falling asleep in the culvert. Believe it or not, that's the end of chapter 1. But guess what? I have a special treat for you. Just hold on, because I'm going to read chapter 2 right now as well, because I love this chapter. And chapter 1 was short. Chapter 2 is called Mr. and Mrs. Wagon Wheel. Yes, my friends, that's their name, Wagon Wheel. See? But someone had seen the dragon. At least he was sure he had seen something blue and yellow and gold galloping down the road. It was Mr. Wagon Wheel, the farmer living in the yellow farmhouse, who had just been closing his window as the dragon ran past.
"What's that galloping noise?"
asked Mrs. Wagon Wheel, sitting up in bed. "A large blue monster just ran by, and after breakfast I'm going to go find out all about it," yelled Mr. Wagon Wheel, jumping into his clothes and rushing off to put the cows in the barn for milking. Mrs. Wagon Wheel, meanwhile, made pancakes and coffee, but forgot to boil the eggs. She was horribly upset at the thought of a monster rushing past her house at 5 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Wagon Wheel hurried through the milking, let the cows into the pasture, and dashed back to the kitchen. He was anxious to eat and be off after the blue demon, as he had decided to call whatever it was. He swallowed a pancake whole and banged 2 eggs on the side of his cup. That would mean, he's used to having hard-boiled eggs, and so you kind of bang them on the side of the cup to break up the shell and be able to peel the eggs. That's my guess. But do you remember what Mrs. Wagon Wheel forgot to do this morning? She was a little distracted thinking about this creature. He banged 2 eggs on the side of his cup. Splop! Raw egg flew all over the table and Mr. Wagon Wheel. Mrs. Wagon Wheel had forgotten to boil the eggs, of course. "Martha, what's the matter with you?" yelled Mr. Wagon Wheel.
"Oh, I'm sorry,"
said poor Mrs. Wagon Wheel.
"I'm so upset about that horrible monster. I don't know what I'm doing."
And she nervously slipped a pancake instead of her handkerchief into her apron pocket. "Well, boil more eggs!" roared Mr. Wagon Wheel, going to the sink to wash off his face and hands and shirt and overalls. Now, Mr. Wagon Wheel liked his eggs hard, very hard. And as he waited for them to get very hard, it began to rain. It was only a drizzly rain, but enough to wash away the dragon's footprints in the dusty road. "Drat it!" thundered Mr. Wagon Wheel, looking out the window. "It's raining."
"I thought we needed rain, dear,"
said Mrs. Wagon Wheel. "We do, but why can't it wait until I capture the blue demon? Maybe I'll never find him."
"Maybe it's just as well,"
said Mrs. Wagon Wheel, carefully putting a spoonful of salt in her coffee. Boy, she's really mixed up today, isn't she? Yeah. "Well, I can see you've no spirit of adventure," grumped Mr. Wagon Wheel, peeling his at last ready, very hard eggs. He picked up his rifle. As you can tell, I'm not real fond of this man. Not at all. Not my favorite character. But he's an important character in the book. We need guys like this, don't we? He picked up his rifle, a strong rope, and put on his raincoat and boots. "I'm off," he yelled, and slammed the door. "He'll never come back," thought Mrs. Wagon Wheel, and she quietly sat down to cry. Oh, did I forget to show you pictures? Just one. Mrs. Wagon Wheel at her old-fashioned stove, putting a pancake in her pocket instead of her handkerchief. Mr. Wagon Wheel ran down the road, pouncing on bushes, peering in behind trees, and examining roadside ditches, yelling all the while, "Coming, ready or not!" He made such a racket that the cows heard him in plenty of time. They huddled around the culvert where the baby dragon was hiding and pretended to be busy drinking water, for they had found the sleeping dragon while Mr. Wagon Wheel was eating his very hard eggs. "Wake up," they had said, "and tell us what you are and what you're doing in our culvert." The dragon woke up with a start and then smiled at the friendly cows. "I'm a baby dragon," he explained, "and I'm on my way home to the great high mountains of Blueland." "But what are you doing in our culvert?" asked a cow. "I'm hiding. You see, most people think," and before I turn the page, I'm going to show you. Here's Mr. Wagon Wheel with his gun. And the happy, friendly cows are in the area of the culvert with the dragon. "I'm hiding. You see, most people think that," this is an important part. Now listen carefully. "Most people think that there are no dragons left. And if I should be captured, I'd surely end up in a zoo or a circus, and I'd never get home again." "Shh," said another cow. "I think I hear Mr. Wagon Wheel now. All through milking time, he was muttering about catching a blue demon. He must have meant you." It was then that the cows huddled around the opening to the culvert, and the dragon crouched down on his stomach in the water. "The culvert!" yelled Mr. Wagon Wheel, brandishing his rifle. That means like holding it up in the air. Look at my face. I don't have time for people like this in my life. Just saying. Okay. "An excellent hiding place for the blue demon." And he started down the bank on the other side of the road. "It's all over now," thought the dragon, who could tell where the farmer was just from the noise that he was making. But just then, Mr. Wagon Wheel looked across the road at his peaceful cows, and he thought, "My cows would be in a panic if the demon were hiding here." He turned back up the bank and ran down the road, beating the bushes and peering behind trees. The cows grazed nearby all day long, talking to the dragon and telling him when it was safe to come out of the culvert. Toward evening, they heard Mr. Wagon Wheel stamping back along the road, yelling, "Hoopla, all of you into the barn!" And as they wandered off, they quietly warned the dragon, "Leave just as soon as he goes into the barn. It's just like him to be out looking for you by flashlight after supper." And they were right. Long after the dragon had flown far beyond the yellow farmhouse and culvert, Mr. Wagon Wheel was shooting into bushes. Mrs. Wagon Wheel was in bed with the case of nerves. That's the end of chapter 2. Here's a picture of my not-so-favorite character, Mr. W. All right, the next time I read will be when we are all back together, live and in person next Tuesday. I'll be reading to us all together in the same room, chapter 3, and it's The Men on the Slope. Thank you for reading, and you must share, of course, your thoughts, your predictions, your feelings, your questions, whatever was on your mind. Thanks for listening. See you soon.